welcome back, listeners, to the BizBlend podcast, where business meets soul and leadership gets personal. I'm your host, Sana, as always, and business today's episode, it's a special one because it isn't just about building companies, it's about building character through chaos, connection, and courage. Listeners, my guest, Jude Shaw, he is a powerhouse entrepreneur who's built it all: a successful law firm, a tech startup, a children's media company, and a thriving personal brand. But beyond the resume is a deeper, profound journey, one marked by vulnerability, reinvention, and the most important, personally, in which I strongly believe, leading with heart. And if you have ever questioned your path, you have felt burned out in your pursuit of success, or you have ever wondered if there's a more human way of leading, I'm very much confident this one's for you. So let's dive into Jude's journey. And Jude, welcome to the show. And I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Thanks for hosting me. Glad to be here.
Jude, different industries, you have built multiple companies. There's definitely a lot of versatility in there, from law to tech to storytelling for kids. And that's not a typical trajectory. So, what inner voice or moment prompted you to pivot so boldly between these ventures?
That's a great question. When I started my law firm, I came from another law firm where their leader was a tough boss, was not a human boss, and led with numbers, KPIs, and money, and not heart. And
Mhm.
at the time, that's what I mentored, and that's what I mirrored. And so when I started my own law firm, I brought that style of leadership with me. Um, because of that, I refer to that as my Judd 1.0 version. And that version of me came from an external place. I thought that the more billboards that I was on would make me more important and therefore more lovable. I felt that the more success I had, the more people would recognize me, the more that I can come from a place of value. And I later found out in my 2.0 version that all of those things are found internally and not externally. And that also changed the entire shift of my culture at my own law firm because when I was coming from a place of self, I was really running and rolling over people as opposed to a place of service and others. And that frequency and that energy invited the team to feel like a part of an organization. And so what happened was over about a decade, I reached the pinnacle of what most people would say is uber success. I was flying on private jets. I owned a big yacht that
Mhm.
was crewed. I was a member of multiple clubs around the country, and I drove exotic cars. And when somebody would be next to me in my Ferrari as I pulled up, and they would look at me, and
Mhm.
I was hoping they would wish they were me because that's the kind of energy I was coming at it. Again, it was more about what others had thought and what others perceived or saw me as that I was holding on to. And that's set up for failure. Um, and ultimately, I reached a place in about 2020 where
Mhm.
I had climbed Mount Success, and I was, the unhappiest I had ever been. I couldn't realize or find why I was so unhappy leading, one of New Jersey's most successful law firms, having all of these toys and all of this success, and it led me to a point where I was literally on the, garage on the floor of my garage curled up in a ball, and I was 50-50 whether I was going to continue living or not. Thankfully, I made a call to a friend who picked up that phone and walked me through into recovery and rehab and therapy, and I went on a big healing journey. And through that journey, I had found that writing or journaling was helping me express what was going on inside. And that began to develop this idea that if I could write or learn about empathy, then I could be more
Mhm.
empathic. I'm not empathic at that moment. I had the mentality that I had a small violin for anybody. And
Mhm.
so if I would work on that, then maybe I could become more empathic. And I was realizing that I was really writing about sort of this inner child effect. And that developed into this children's picture book series now called Sterling the Night, which is really sort of how I wanted to show up as a younger version of me and teach myself important social and emotional learning skills that I would have needed already as an adult. And that became its own um, sort of project and container, and it grew from there. And so that's how the children's media company came about. And through that journey, I realized that I could speak to other organizations and other leaders about heart-led leadership skills, ones in which we can own our story and we can be vulnerable, and that's not a weakness. And we can show empathy and compassion, and that can invite drive. And that when we come from a place of authenticity, there's a larger buy-in because before when I would roll out something at my law firm, of course my team would think, "What's up Judd's sleeve now?" Or "Why is he doing this?" And they would
Mhm.
question it as opposed to this version that I would show up authentic, and then the team would know, "Okay, he's struggling through this. How can we help him through it?" And so that sort of led through speaking and writing a book that will be launched in 2026 called How to Live Authentically: The Surprising Cure for Loneliness and Disconnection. And so all of these other things that I'm doing today really came out of that healing journey. I'm not a thought leader in terms of um, the academia of it. I don't have a degree in anything other than being a Juris Doctorate lawyer. But what I do have is the experience of being a CEO, being a leader, moving through uncertainty, working through team challenges, working around disruption, and now being able to apply heart led leadership skills to that and finding how much difference there is in my people, in my companies, and really even in my personal life when I show up that way.
Wow. I mean, Jude, that's a complete overhaul, I must say. Complete overhaul. And, as we grow and we navigate through different phases in our life, um, the definition around success changed for us. I mean, now if someone would ask you to define success, Jude, what would you say, and how would you differentiate it with the version, the Jude 1.0 that you had?
Yeah, great question. The lens of that success when it comes internally really comes from the impact of service to others, the impact on my team, the impact on my clients, and the impact y- 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 on on the things that I touch in the world around me. And so that's really what I define success. I believe that when that happens, the money follows. When you're driven by factors such as money alone, it loses a certain energy. It loses the energy of the impact. It loses the energy of your your true talent, your true authenticity, and what you're here to what's God put you on earth to really deliver. And so the lens for me now is not external. It's one of sort of a peace one. Am I, at the end of the day, when I shut my computer down, do I feel like I've done good work in the terms of providing the service, but doing it in a way that I recognize has an effect on so many others?
Yeah, that definitely resonates. And I think, I believe through your journey, Jude, many of our listeners, they will connect with this because that tension between achievement and alignment, it is real. So many of us are successful, but somewhere down the line, secretly, it feels like suffocating. And I really thank you for peeling that back, Jude, because while we all share our achievements, our highs, but it really needs a lot of courage, heart, and vulnerability to share your failures, your weaknesses as well.
Totally.
And
To that point, that's the beauty of our stories. When we own our story, it's a gift to the world because it's our messiness that we come out of, grown, evolved, a new chapter. And
yeah,
so many of us feel shame about the things that we've done or how we've shown up, but you can't change those things in the past. You can only change your perspective of them. And when we realize that, most people, when I'm on a stage or when I'm connecting to other leaders or even speaking to my own team, n- none of them resonate or relate to the Ferraris, to the yachts, to the jets, to the vacations, yada, yada, yada. They relate to the fact that there was a point where I felt suicidal because I was so lonely. They resonate to the point that I was disconnected because I wasn't I wasn't aligned with my own core values. I wasn't coming from a place of values. They relate to the fact that there was a messiness in my life and that in that hole that I was in, I found the ladder to climb out and I'm standing again. And it's also, they resonate with going back, knowing that if I enter that arena, I may get beat up again, but I do that knowing that I grow from that. And I think that that's the beauty of the vulnerability. That's the beauty of authenticity, that people resonate and relate to that.
absolutely. And Jude, as we're talking about vulnerability now, often it's quite organic. Sorry, not organic, but very natural to connect or picturize vulnerability with weakness.
Mm,
Uh, and now I would like to bring in two elements here when it comes to vulnerability. First of all, in high stakes business or law, vulnerability can often be perceived as weakness. And then on top of that, there is this ideal ideal perception around masculinity that you have this, you have your car, you have your house, you have everything, perfect, um, rich, and all that perfect perception. So how do you navigate that paradox in both the
mm,
context?
great question. I always say that vulnerability is not a weakness. It's a strength, and it is seen so often um, by 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 others as not being masculine, as being
Mm.
weak, as being exposed. But what we don't realize is that vulnerability is an act of courage. Sharing it is the gift. And when you share your vulnerability, you're doing something very powerful because you're giving permission for others to do the same. What you're saying is it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
And so when we do that, there's an example that I give that a lot of people don't know in business, that there's a Post-it note, and how many billions of people have used the Post-it note, but no one realizes that it was actually invented by accident. There was a 3M scientist who was trying to create a super strong adhesive, but
Yeah.
instead he made a glue that barely stuck at all. And it wasn't what he set out to make, and it was technically a failure. But if he hadn't shared it, if he buried it out of embarrassment or shame, we would have missed out on this brilliant tool. And it's a great reminder that even our missteps can lead to incredible breakthroughs when we have the courage to own them. And so, vulnerability becomes the strength, because in it is where we find that we can take the moment to say, there's a mistake that I've made. There's a moment where I felt overwhelmed. There's a time where I felt unsure. There's something, that I'm struggling with. And when we embrace the vulnerability, something unexpected happens. It's that authenticity doesn't push people away, it actually brings them closer. Vulnerability, in my opinion, is the language of authenticity. And when we're speaking it, we're giving permission for others to do the same. True understanding in our relationships require vulnerability. And that's what human connection is built on.
Wow, that's a wonderful example. I think it brilliantly it kind of symbolizes the essence here. I mean, this kind of leadership, it's rooted in humanity. It definitely feels like the new frontier. And yeah, I believe not everyone's ready for it. Um, there will be a lot of skepticism sometimes, a bit of rebellion. I mean, I would love to know your opinion on that.
Mm. I think this is the new world of leadership,
Mm.
particularly as the workforce is turning in generationally, and younger generations, the Gen Zs who are coming into the workforce, in my experience, are coming there for purpose. They're coming there for mentoring. They're coming there for leadership. And what they find is that any great leader is one that has the ability to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Who can help me? And just the eyes that open up, and the look on our team's face when they're like, that's the boss who's saying that. That gives them then the ability to say, hey, you know what? I'm also spinning my wheels on something over here, and I can't really, get to the root of it. Who can help me? And so it really spreads.
I absolutely agree with you, Jude, because I have firsthand seen the kind of culture, the kind of rapport, the kind of dynamics, this style of leadership creates within members. It is such a healthy environment in there, and you never feel as a team member. I should say, as a team member, you kind of don't feel that. That hesitation to share your weaknesses or anything you are stuck with or you're not able to understand something. Because traditionally, what we have seen is you just are told what has to be done. Um, you are not assumed to question back a lot. Just have to get the task done. And if you're not, and then if something goes wrong, then it's kind of, unfortunately, you have to take the blame for that. So I it's a first-hand, account of what I can feel, what I can say about this style of leadership.
Yeah.
And Jude, moving on, let's talk about the myth of balance. I mean, you are now a speaker, CEO, author, parent, wearing so many hats. And people love to throw around the idea of work life balance, but now we are gradually turning towards work life harmony. So for me, I know for the fact it's not real. Um, I would love to know your opinion on this. I mean, is there any work life balance, or is it just another expectation that sets us up to feel like we are failing?
Well, that is so good. I love that question. And recently, not so long ago, I posted about this on my social at Judd Shaw Official. And I addressed this in a post saying that work life balance is BS. I was bleeped out. And that's because what work life balance says to me is that we're on a seesaw, that
Mm.
we have to balance the amount of work we're doing and the amount of life we're living. And at the end, I don't think any of us in our last days of our lives will want to wish we spent more time at the office. And we're going to want the people around us, our connections to be near us, not the things, the possessions that we may have earned in this. And so work-life balance gives the wrong impression to team that they have to make sure that they can only give 50% of their life, and 50% of their life has to be dedicated to work. And so what I like to say instead of work-life balance is is your work lifting your life? And it should be adding value to your life. You should be going into your work and coming out feeling renewed, maybe exhausted by the work itself, but renewed in the passion and the purpose that you're getting out of it. Oftentimes, I talk to my team and I'll ask them, why did you come work for me? Why did you come to this firm? And this may be an employee who's been with me for 10 years already. And the question is really reminding them of why they took this job. What did they want to get out of it? And are they finding that? And if not, how do we tap into that or maybe reset what they're looking to get out of it today? But I I don't believe that work-life balance is a good term. I think that your work should add to your life, not balance it.
Hmm. I completely agree with that, and for the fact that it could be physically taking a toll on you, but then also you should be mindful that okay, if I'm physically tired, then at least I'm at that liberty to take a pause, take a breath, and kind of rejuvenate myself and then get back to it. But soulfully, like inside out, it is serving your purpose. It is aligning with your values. Um, for me, I think that is something that reignites me from the inside out. So for me, in this type of scenario, also I would not think so much about the physical aspect of burnout.
Yeah, it's a real thing. It's an absolute real thing. And when employers burn out their employees, when that fire goes out that really has lit them,
Mm.
it's it's hard to light it up again. It's irreversible. They're just checked out, they're jaded, they're they're not in it anymore. And so to avoid burnout, 3 questions that I ask my team at a meeting. And what we do is we imagine we're sitting around a campfire, literally a campfire, not the Zoom screen, not the boardroom, not a conference, a campfire. And around that campfire, we ask three questions. What is your spark? And the spark is the idea is what is lighting you the F up? Like what is really just driving you in the last 30 days since we've met in this team setting? And that can be personal or professional because we also want to hear about maybe there's something outside of work that's just like you're just getting so much out of that's really lighting you up. And what that does is one, it drives connection between people because you're like, oh, I didn't realize that, they were into motorcycles and they're motorcycle riding on the weekends and they just got a new motorcycle. And so it gives new information, but also for the person sharing it, it it just solely speaks to them, and by sharing that alone, they're getting a renewed sense of energy, and that's what we're really looking at for the next 30 days. And then it's what's your firewood? What's the thing that's keeping your fire lit? Like, what is giving you energy? What are you coming from? Or what's putting that fire out? And just as important, that's also known as a lot of people refer to them as bottlenecks or issues or problems that they're having. But what's your firewood? And through that, a lot of times that drives conversation and collaboration. Someone will say, what my firewood is actually what's putting out my fire, and I'm struggling with this. And someone else can say, hey, I've been through that. Let's talk after the meeting. I can help you. And so talking about that firewood is able to now identify, is this person's fire over those last 30 days, was it really lit? Was it strong? Was it tended to? Or are they starting to move towards that burnout? Are their fires going out? And addressing it in a short period of time as opposed to waiting for that burnout to happen. And then lastly, it's what's your ember? And the ember is the important thing to keep your fire lit over those next 30 days. And the ember is essentially what am I taking out of this meeting? What am I taking out of this setting that's going to help me keep my fire tended to over the next 30 days? And those are three questions that every month I address with my team, which helps me understand what's sparking them, what are they living off of, what are they loving to do, what's keeping them that energy or what's putting it out, and what are they going to be able to take from this to help them over the next month.
That is really interesting. Really interesting. I think this invites a lot of conversation, dialogue uh, with internal or external within the team, and also course correction. Because time to time we are kind of introspecting on these aspects, whether it's our work or whether it's our life. So that's quite interesting, Judd. And before we wrap up, since we are we have touched down upon a different style of leadership here. um w- what I mean, what kind of future you're looking in terms of leadership? Because today it isn't about having all the answers, but it's more about creating safety and real connection. So what does that look like in action, especially when leading a team under pressure?
That's so great that emotional intelligence really has come up in the last 10 years and evolved into almost from a soft skill to a necessary skill. And part of that is helping teams and people, really that's what we're talking about, are humans, helping them when they show up at work with self-awareness, with self-regulation, with empathy, with compassion for others, with ability to express themselves both vulnerably and directly. And and so I think that the drive for me is really learning how heart centered leadership is becoming more skillful, more artful, and how to improve that. Because ultimately, at its core, is the ability to drive human connection with your people, to um, also to create a place where your team feels seen, where they feel heard, where they feel valued. And all of that, when a person feels a sense of belonging to a
Mm.
community, to an organization, to even a group of friends, it's a place where we move out of survival and we start to really thrive. And so when we can do that in our personal lives, I think it's just as equal to do in our professional lives. And so for me, it's really the the storytelling part of it is where I'm diving into it, and I'm seeing sort of a blue ocean of where heart-centered leadership skills can come from. Is that how do we leaders, or even just human to human, tap into our stories, own those stories, and show up with gratitude for them, self grace, self compassion, and being able to understand that all of us are many times walking around with silent struggles that we're not sharing or speaking about. And when we can open that up, even in the workplace, and we can step out of any shame, and we can step away from concern of judgment, we really can step into our power.
Beautifully said, Judd. Beautifully. If our listeners they would like to connect with you and they would like to share their thoughts on this, what would be the best way?
Oh, I'd invite anybody to go to juddshaw.com, JUDDSHAW.com. That'll take you to sort of the Juddverse where you can find speaking and workshops, my books, the Sterling the Night container, my law firm, but also mostly about how to learn to create your own core values, how you can learn heart-centered leadership skills as well, and of course on social at Judd Shaw Official, where I post brave storytelling and brave conversations.
Awesome. I'll make sure to have all the links and details in the show notes. And Jed, this was such a raw conversation. I must thank you for showing up with such raw honesty, vulnerability, sharing your story, your journey, um, showing us that leadership isn't about building empires, it's about building trust. So thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
And to all the listeners out there, especially to all the entrepreneurs, business owners, to anyone, if you are in a season of uncertainty, burnout, or reinvention, take heart. Your story isn't over, and your softness, it is not a liability. It might just be your superpower. So stay grounded, stay bold, and this is your host, Sana, and I'll catch you next time on BizBlend. Thank you.